Welcome back. As the AFL kicks off tonight, sports fans are saying to the administrators, get politics out of sport. The New South Wales candidate taking on Matt Green-Keane at next Saturday's election. Plenty to get through though before all of that. Joining me now, former Liberal MP for Boothby in South Australia, Nicolle Flint, and a current Senator, Liberal Senator for Tasmania, Chandler. Nick, I mentioned this at the top of the show, this family, two young children, siblings from an Aboriginal mother. Their adoption could be barred. Their long-term foster family wants to adopt them, but it's been discovered 5 years after they were placed with that family that they have an Aboriginal background, and that's why the case is before the court. The court says, you've got to go through this rigmarole in relation to consulting with Aboriginal organisations. It's pretty tough, though, because these young children, the foster parents, are pretty much the only parents they know.
That's right, Peter. After 5 years in clearly a loving, stable family environment, these poor kids and their foster parents are facing being separated because of this law. It's interesting, I spoke recently, Peter, on your show about the tragic case of Chloe Valentine here in South Australia, a little girl who died when she was with her mother and her mother's boyfriend, and her grandmother had alerted the authorities a number of times as to the danger she was in. The coroner said in the report on Chloe that adoption should be an element of child protection. And surely we should be considering the absolute rights of the children here and what is in their best interests. And the judge has made favourable comments about the foster parents. It really sounds like the best place for them is with a family that they've come to know over 5 years.
And love them. All right, let's stay with young people's issues. Youth crime in Victoria, a massive surge, an 18% rise in crime amongst young people aged 10 to 17. Now, offenders in this bracket are responsible for over 18,000 incidents in Victoria. Some of these kids, Claire, are as young as 10. We know right now that is the criminal age of responsibility. Right across the country, states and territories want to lift that age to 14, meaning that the vast majority of these offenders here would get off scot-free.
Well, it's a real concern right across Australia, Peter, and I'm hearing very similar concerns from constituents in Tasmania as well. We are by no means immune from this wave in youth crime, and obviously we want to be steering children away from the criminal justice system as much as possible, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that some of these crimes are very serious, and some of the perpetrators, although they're very young, are a danger to the community.
Now, Nick, I know you are not from Melbourne, but you're here often enough. They've taken away the crime of public drunkenness in Victoria. They're going to have a sobering up centre in Collingwood. We know you can be drunk, therefore, on the streets. You can shoot up your heroin and ice. But if you want to go into a pub and sit there and have a smoke, the police will come after you. This doesn't make sense.
Peter, what does make sense over there in Danistan, the former beautiful state of Victoria? This is a really bizarre decision, I think, by the Andrews Labor government. It's going to cost the taxpayers of Victoria something like $50 million, maybe more, over just 2 years to essentially run a trial. So they get rid of the crime of public drunkenness and start new centres to send heavily intoxicated people too, so they can sober up. I mean, can you imagine any worse outcome than putting a whole lot of heavily intoxicated people in the same place with healthcare workers? I mean, the security costs alone are going to be huge. I just think this is a recipe for disaster.
Claire, I want to pick up issues in Iran. I know you followed it closely ever since there was those protests in relation to Mr Khamenei. Claims in the last couple of days that up to 5,000 Iranian schoolgirls might have been poisoned. What can you tell us?
Well, these are some really concerning reports coming out of Iran, Peter, and it looks like this has unfortunately been happening for months and months, young girls in particular being hospitalised with suspected poisoning. But sadly, this is incredibly consistent with all of the behaviour that we've seen from the Islamic Republic regime, which we know has been targeting women and girls specifically because of the role that they are playing in the uprising over there and bravely protesting over the death in police custody of Mahsa Amini, so you say. And look, I just think it's impossible to believe that these poison attacks could have been occurring for this long without somebody in the regime having knowledge of who was behind it. So very concerning reports.
Nick, just quickly, AFL fans say they want all the woke politics out of sport just at the time there's a real push from politicians to get all the sporting codes together to push the voice.
Yes, that's right, Peter. Honestly, the AFL and activism should not mix, as I wrote in a column before I got elected in Parliament way back in 2014 or 15. It's just wrong. Keep politics out of sport, keep the activism out of sport. But do you think, Peter, that this is just a sign that Albo is desperate, that the Prime Minister is desperate to try and save his referendum? That's what it looks like to me.
You're not wrong, I think, there, Nicolle Flint. Nicolle Flint, Claire Chandler, thank you for your time.